Hello everybody, my name is Dratnos, and today we have the Season 4 patch notes. Now, 2 or 3 hours ago, I recorded a video about everything we knew about Season 4 up till this point. A lot of that information is duplicated, and I won't go over it again in this video. Be a little card thing at the top of this video if you want to go watch that video instead to hear all that information. But in this video, we are just going to go over the new information, including the class balance, the trinket tuning, the dungeon tuning, all that kind of stuff that is coming in this season. So to start off, a little bit of information is given here about the fated affixes, fated powers that is going to happen in the fated raids each week. In addition to more health and damage and item level rewards, these raids will have some combination, unclear exactly how many, whether it rotates, whether there's a certain one for the week or multiple, that kind of stuff on these bosses. And they all have an element of getting you power from doing them. So potentially, especially for like the hard mythic encounters, if you use these well, you may actually find it makes the fight easier than if the affix wasn't there at all. Or maybe not easier, but like if you do it correctly, the throughput checks might be lowered by getting the value out of these. So for instance, Creation Spark, targeted players get a dot. When this is dispelled, sparks fly off and hit the ground, but if you grab them instead, then you get a Fated Infusion, increasing the flow of time. That's like the Elisand effect, where your cooldowns and everything are going faster. You know, and it's sort of like a bunch of haste as well, and the movement speed of any player within the radius. So, medium-sized effect here, depending on how much flow of time increase we're talking about. Reconfiguration Emitter, an enemy constantly casts, doing damage if successful, so probably interruptible. Over time, it gains energy, increased damage done, and then when it's defeated, it gets you get an infusion based on the enemy's energy value. So the more you let it charge up, maybe, the more you go without killing it, because it looks like it gains the energy over time, not on successful cast. So if you can keep it kicked for like a minute, maybe it gets to full energy and you get an absolute truckload of these stats. Protoform Barrier infuses a powerful enemy to inflict cosmic damage to players. When removed, so maybe this is like purged, the power manifests as an enemy who shields all enemies in the area, sharing the pool of shielded health. You can also heal something to contribute against this pool. If the shield breaks, damage and healing done to enemies is inflicted upon them, and players are granted an infusion, giving them health, damage, healing, and absorbs done, based on how much that player contributed to the shield breaking. So, be an interesting bit of gameplay here, because you do need to actually break the shield in order to trigger this, but you might want to have specific players do as much as they can to this so that they get the benefit, although there's a little bit of counter, like if you use cooldowns to break through this, then you don't have the cooldowns for the damage amp, so we'll see how that works out. Maybe it'll just be everybody targets it. And then finally, Chaotic Essence, an orb which defeats all players. Uh-oh, that's going to be hard to deal with. I imagine that's supposed to be damages all players, but may be interacted with. This activates the foe, which spawns additional enemies. For each one slain, more spawn. After the window of time, players get another Fated Infusion, increasing damage, health, absorbs, stacking for each enemy defeated. So overall, yeah, all of these offer you power for dealing with them, and they seem like fairly simple effects, which makes sense if you want these to be going on during, you know, Mythic Sire Denathrius or Mythic Jailer type encounters, right? Anything more complicated than this would be a huge level of complexity overload on those fights. Then here's the information about the dinars and the heroic and mythic upgrade tokens. Again, check out my earlier video for more discussion on how that will work. New M+ affix, Shrouded. Also got videos about how that affix works so far, and I'll have a bunch once it actually comes out. The M+ rotation changing, of course. Portals are available in Oribos to Gorgrond, Karazhan, and Mechagon, so no need to like rush the level 20 teleports. You can get there from Oribos fairly quick. Slight nerfs here. So they actually, both Tazavesh's have had enemy forces adjusted. We don't know whether that means more total count, less total count, or just moving the count around to make certain pulls better, certain pulls worse, without like hugely changing the total amount of pulls you have to do. They've nerfed the big giants, the tidal stomp damage by 15%, and the undertow increase on it as well, so should be a little bit more livable to pull one of these in higher level keys. Anchor Shot on Time Cap and Hooktail no longer scales with Fortified. I wonder if it will scale with Tyrannical now, and his damage has been reduced. That's the thing that like shoots out from the ship and pulls somebody in, you know? and also does a bunch of damage up front. Veteran Sparkcaster, Hyperlight Salvos dealing less damage, and the custom security at the start of the dungeon are going to cast Hard Light Baton less often for less damage. They've also nerfed the Fan Mail AoE on Postmaster, which good change there. I think that was a good boss to target. Empowered World Bosses, as mentioned before, whenever a raid is faded, the associated world boss is going to give 285s, so could be worth grabbing some of those. All right, class balance time. Balanced Druid Starfall damage increased by 15%. I'm sure that that's enough to make them competitive at AoE. Not. Survival Hunter, they've buffed Raptor Strike, Mongoose Bite, and Kill Command single target damage. They've nerfed the damage of Wildfire Bomb. So, interesting, the 4 set contains 2 different Wildfire Bomb bonus damages. One was a 30% and one was an 80%, I think. They've changed the 30 down to a 20. They haven't said anything about if the 80 is changing as well to like a 70 or something. Or maybe it's staying at that 80. Wildfire Bomb and any Wildfire Infusion variants of Wildfire Bomb now deal reduced damage when hitting more than 8 targets. So they're soft capping at 8 this spec, which seems fine to me. Again, never had a problem with like soft caps at 8 for things. It's just hard caps at 5 that I have a huge problem with. Mad Bombardier set bonus boosts Wildfire Bombs in fun and powerful ways, but with how often it activates and not having a target cap, they've exceeded expectations in content where there are many targets to hit. Rather than adjusting frequency or power level of the buffed Wildfire Bomb, we're going to lower its effectiveness while pulling very high numbers of enemy targets, and they're buffing some single target as well. This actually seems like a pretty reasonable set of changes to Survival Hunters. I haven't seen what they're saying about this, but I imagine if I was a Survival Hunter and I knew I was getting nerfed, I would be pretty happy that this was the nerf I was getting. Especially if they haven't touched the other half of the 4Ps. They've buffed the clear casting duration for Arcane. Okay. That's not an irrelevant PvE throughput increase. Just makes it a little bit, primarily a PvP concern. They've nerfed Spinning Crane Kick by 5%. Again, if I'm a Windwalker Monk, I'm happy to see this. I would have been a little bit worried that more was coming to make the spec do less damage in AoE, so... Yeah, very, very reasonable soft touch to the spec. Prot Paladins getting an increase to their baseline armor value and Holy Shield blockchain. So actually pretty strong here. You know, Prot Paladins, they do die sometimes, even in like high tyrannical to auto attacks, that kind of stuff can be kind of tough for Prot Paladin, but honestly, they're already really good in keys. The raid situation for them this tier, I think this is particularly a good change for making them a little bit tankier in raids. Shadow Priest, they are buffing Mindseer, Shadow Crash, and Searing Nightmare by substantial amounts here. So, again, this was another spec that was really suffering in AoE situations, so good to see them coming at that. Destro, Chaos Bolt damage up only in PvE, Incinerate, Immolate damage up, Conflagrate damage up in PvE, but Blasphemy is no longer granting Reign of Chaos, which is a huge nerf to the 4 set of this. I kind of suspect that this spec will still be fine in M+, but it definitely needed a big touch here. So, yeah, this is a big shift, so we'll be monitoring feedback closely, and we'll adjust in the future if needed here, too. And finally, Prot Warrior, they've buffed Ignore Pain by 30%, and they've made the absorption cap not something that you're going to have to hit as much here. So, we find that Prot Warriors struggle with magic and unblockable forms of incoming damage. This change is intended to help improve survivability in those situations, while the change to the cap will constrain its strength otherwise. Oh, actually, so maybe this is a net nerf to how much of the cap you can get? I don't know. So yeah, previously it was you could do 2 Ignore Pains, right, and you'd hit the cap. I wonder how many you'll be able to do with the cap based on max HP. If the cap is just a full health bar, that's a lot. But if it's like a percentage of your health bar, then maybe you'll be unable to really build up a big Ignore Pain. We'll see how that works out. Okay, items and rewards. Most of this has already been mentioned. Just really quick, again, check previous video for a discussion of all of these things. Helms and Wastes from Sanctum can now roll regular sockets, and they can be socketed with the thing, which makes sense, right? Those were spots that had domination sockets last time, and we'll have regular sockets now this time. Let's see, all of this also has all already been discussed. Oh, 10,000 Cosmic Flux for the 278 conduit thing. That's actually going to be kind of annoying as well, because it only gives you your Covenant conduit of the Covenant you currently are. So last season, I would purchase this thing 4 times on my characters that unlocked it so that I could swap to each Covenant and get 278 of the Covenant conduit. This coming season, that's going to be kind of annoying, not something you'll really want to do for 10,000 Cosmic Flux per. I wonder if that's something that they will look to change. Probably not. That's probably just going to be annoying. Stygian Embers no longer drop from stuff, so you won't get those, filling up your bags. Basically, they're going to make it so that you don't get annoyed by the Sanctum of Domination Shard stuff. The following trinkets have been adjusted. Bells now stacks on the player rather than the target, making it a lot less painful to use. Blood Spattered Scale, 25% nerf. Chains of Domination, damage buff. Decanter buff. Heart of the Swarm buff. IQD secondary stack gain, nerf by 25%. Very, very glad to see the Blood Spattered Scale and the IQD nerfs here, making sure that those at eye level 278 aren't going to be BIS throughout next season. Thought Cage now does more stuff. Macabre Sheet Music buffed. Mana Bound Mirror healing increased. Memory of Past Sins. Old Warrior Soul nerfed 10% on the haste gain here. My suspicion is this thing will still be Turbo BIS, especially at Faded Eye level for all strength users, but it's good to nerf it. Certainly, I'm pretty sure it was much more than 10% better than other Stat 6, though. Pulsating Rift Shards being buffed, and they are actually making it fire sooner, so a 1.5 second delay on this. It was kind of a Blood Spattered Scale type trinket with a long delay. Maybe it'll be usable with a 1.5 second delay instead. Not sure, though. This, again, was a tank trinket. Relic of the Frozen Race, that's the Kel'Thuzad trinket, damage up. Resonant Bell, buffed. Scars of Fraternal Strife, that's the Jailer trinket. Stats have been buffed. This thing already actually did a lot of stats, but it came with a downside and was kind of clunky. Shattered Orb of Torment, Mastery, small buff, because this one was already actually used in some cases. Skulker's Wing, damage buffed. Lion's Roar, doubling the CDR on it and making it absorb 30% instead of 20% of the damage taken in the zone. So, again, another trinket that never really saw the light of day, but maybe. Tome of Monstrous Concoctions damage also increased here. So, yeah, the idea is they want these trinkets to be considered more, and they want these old dungeon trinkets to be less BIS. The only raid trinket they've nerfed here was Old Warrior Soul, which was by far the best one. All of these other raid trinkets have been buffed. Yeah, I think that this is a good set of things to do. I'm curious if they've actually brought any of these trinkets into BIS range. Maybe the closest one would actually be a fairly small buff on an already fairly okay trinket, the Shattered Orb of Torment. Either way, even if this doesn't make any of them BIS, it makes them better, and that's definitely a good thing. They've also slightly buffed the drop rate of Edge of Night and the Sylph Bow. They've buffed Genesis Lathe and Sepulchre's Savior, which was that weird tank shield from Vigilant Guardian. So, again, unclear whether this is going to be enough to make it good, but it does mean that it's, even if it doesn't bring it into being like the best item, it means it's a lot less bad to use it, at least medium term. All right, some PvP changes. New coloration of the Gladiator Soul Eater mount, which my understanding is the PvPers aren't too jazzed about their recolor. The PvE one got changed and the PvP one didn't. So a little bit of a sore subject for the PvPers. I'm not going to go through all of these PvP changes, but it is worth noting there's a lot of PvP patch notes here. I'm not a PvPer, so I'm not going to go through this, but if you are, definitely take a look here in the content notes. And I'm mostly, in general, I'm just glad to see big patch notes. I think that's a good thing to do. So, yeah. Overall, pretty cool set of changes. I would say a medium amount of class balancing changes. I think they picked some good targets here as well. I'm a little bit sad to not see Guardian Druid buffs. Other than that, I think these were a lot of the ones that most needed some help. So, yeah, I would like to see some more than this, but I'm definitely glad it wasn't just Destro and Serve. Yeah, looking forward to see what the meta looks like. I'm curious to see how much Hyperthread Wrist Wraps does for Fire. I don't know how much it actually does for their current build compared to how much it did for them in Season 4 of BFA when it was really, really BIS. And yeah, overall, these faded powers look like they'll be pretty fun as well. Hopefully not too annoying, just a nice little... Honestly, it seems like kind of a bonus. It seems like it's going to make the fights easier rather than harder, but we'll see. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you're looking forward to Season 4. Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.